about to begin. We want to welcome you to the Vampire and Devil Show. We want to welcome you to the Vampire and Devil Show. It's gonna be bloody fun. We're gonna kill everyone. Welcome to the Vampire and Devil Show. With lots of blood and lots of guts. Two horror fanatics and rock and roll nuts. Welcome to the Vampire and Devil Show.
Fangs. Do you like hot things? The devil likes hot things. The devil is the hottest thing. As you know, Vampire and Devil Podcast, we have partnered with Coney Island Saucery. We are very, very honored, very pleased that Aaron has trusted the dark side with his sauces.
Oh yeah, it's time to light up those assholes and start eating some hot shit. You like that in your finger foods? You like it on your tacos? Buy some hot sauce from the Hot Sauce Kings, Coney Island Sauceries.
Don't forget, use the coupon code, the discount code of Vampire and Devil to get 15% off of all of your orders and support a great man, a great small business, and some really, really tastiness. As you can see, this ends in some prop hot sauce. You know, we like it, we use it, that we do. So Coney Island Saucery, coming at you as part of the Vampire and Devil Podcast.
Oh yeah.
Horns up, fangs out. Bang schools. It is Vampire, it is Devil. Parlez-vous français, Devil?
Yeah, parlez-vous France? France is in the house today. Not only in the Olympics and but also in the movie that we're gonna talk about.
Absolutely. Hot tension, high tension in the US version. Honestly, dude, I thought it was so cool that the fans picked this one, and I've always loved this movie. I thought this movie's always just been super cool. It's really weird. It's got a heavy gore factor to it. But first and foremost, I mean, it's weird. And that's something I always thought was like super duper cool about this movie. But yeah, dubbed over from France to a traditional like English version with like an asterisk attached to that. Because you and I have talked about this just whenever we've talked about this movie, just having friendly conversations about how it like jumps from like dubbed to English to straight French to English to dub to straight French, and then, but that's actually how the movie was designed.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's it's in that time where we were getting a lot of these foreign horror movies coming out. You know, like we've talked about with the Let the Right One In. You know, you have this movie High Tension. There was a movie called Martyrs that came out that was from France too. That's really cool. And Alexander Aja is the director of this movie, who's gone on to do some cool kick-ass movies. He's done a few remakes. He did the Hills Have Eyes remake, but he also did the Horns movie with Daniel Radcliffe, which was written by Stephen King's son.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that movie, well, that book's awesome, but that movie was pretty badass. And, you know, I give a lot of credit to Daniel for tackling that role because, you know, not his fault, and it set him up for life. But when you're the face, no pun intended, of Harry Potter and Gryffindor and Hogwarts, that can be a very tricky thing to break from. Especially if you want to continue on with any kind of a career, especially when you're, 7 movies and 20 years of your life from a little boy to, all the way up. So, but I thought Daniel was awesome in that movie. But yes, so Horns rocks. But yeah, man, Alexander Aja, that really cool. I always loved that Hills Have Eyes remake. I always thought I just love all things about the Piranha movies, old, new, or Double D, because they're cool and fun, but can't be up to stupid as well. I just think the Piranha movies are a lot of fun. But yeah, man, I always thought that this movie was just like super badass. I thought it was really cool. It's that 70s, 80s kind of homage style to it, where it deals with like, questionable thoughts, paranoia, a little bit of like schizophrenia. We talked about this movie has, stuff like The Shining played a part in this movie. The movie Maniac, which we've talked about on this show before, was an inspiration for this show, as in the original Maniac in particular. But it's a cool, really interesting design about where a person is, what they're really thinking about, what are their thoughts, and how much is too much when it comes to you loving somebody.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's got like I always felt like this movie always kind of has a little bit of like a M. Night Shyamalama kind of feel to it with the plot twist, and we'll talk about it. But obviously, there's going to be huge spoilers in this movie when we talk about this review. And like I said, I mean, the movie's come out many years now. If you haven't seen it yet, oops, we're sorry. But yeah, we're definitely going to be posting some spoilers about this movie. But yeah, it's a cool concept. You got these two girls that are basically on a trip. I get they're schoolgirls and stuff like that, college girls, and they're just getting ready to like, work on some exams and stuff like that, and start, breaking down to figuring out what they want to study and stuff like that. So they're trying to get away from like where I guess they live was more of like a city college life. So they decided to go out to her house in the middle of the woods, kind of like, a getaway sort of. And yeah, you got the girl, and all of a sudden, they're playing some pranks, and they get into the house, and they get super late. They come to the house, and she beats the father and the daughter. I mean, the father and the mother and the little boy, and you kind of get this little. It's pretty cool because it starts it off with the scene that I think is just an interesting scene to begin with. When you see the house, you see this guy and this like it kind of reminds me of a Jeepers Creepers kind of truck. It's like this really badass looking mean truck, and he's getting some head, and then all of a sudden you find out that he's getting some head from a head, because
Yeah.
that's all it is a severed head. And I always thought that was just a cool scene to have in the movie, because it's just like, what the hell? I kind of like just go like, kind of like, oh, this is where this movie is going to be heading. That you're seeing a guy get fellatio from a dead thing.
Right, absolutely. Especially with, as hardcore and to a certain degree untouchable as horror movies are and feel, and kind of try to toe that line as well, you know, necrophilia is still a bit taboo, even in this genre. So it's very interesting to not only go that way, but really put it out there as an opening scene. Like, it kind of sets the tone for how crazy this movie could and does get.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and then it just this, like I said, the cool thing about this movie, it just goes right into it. I mean, they get to the house, it's super super late. She's the one girl's gonna go to bed. Then the other girl's, the one that's visiting is gonna go outside and have a smoke. And while she's outside having smoke, apparently when the girl wants to go to bed, she's super tired, but then decides to take a shower, I guess, even though she was shooting. And then you see her watching her in the shower, and then she kind of, goes back up to her room to, get a nightcap, and decides that she wants to listen to a weird ass song and play with herself.
Yeah.
which is out of all the songs, I would be like, okay, what the hell are you listening to play with yourself? But hey, whatever. But then, yeah, and that in itself is kind of weird. Like, I'm gonna go visit my friend and stay in their house, but I'm gonna play with myself. So that's kind of odd too. Like, you know what I mean? I understand. Yeah, you know,
Yeah, it gives you that.
get your business done, but
Get your business done. Yeah, she's flicking the bean a little bit, and but at the same time, it promotes and sets up also that curiosity of, like I said before about, like, how far is too far maybe when it comes to love, and so automatically it starts making you curious of how much, you know she cares for her friend. You know, is she looking for more? Does she want more? Does she just simply consider her hot friend? And and likes to just think about her in that way. Because stuff like that can be a thing as well. Um, but yeah, again, similar to the head by head, it's another interesting, you know, taboo kind of way to go. Again, handling your business alone isn't taboo itself, but it just is kind of weird in the general sense, like you said, of where you're going to your friend's place on your way to school or on your way back or for whatever seclusion they need, and you made time for this activity.
yeah,
So
yeah.
it's it's definitely interesting when it comes to that. But then it also, leads up to basically the home invasion, where this just crazy dude in the Jeepers Creepers van is just coming in and basically just starts, taking names, man, with just like not just killing people, but like I said, just fucking taking names, and like nobody is safe and leaving his mark, but also it seems so nonchalant in all of this, which was the one thing I always found a little bit confusing about the movie as I would watch it, when I saw it for the first time, I mean, where I'm like, well, serial killers or home invaders or just killers in general when it comes to these movies, you don't have to go too deep or think too hard about why they're doing what they're doing. But this cat always seemed just so nonchalant about everything that he was doing, was always just down for whatever was around. I mean, just decapitates this one fucker with the dresser, which you're just kind of like, oh, wow, okay, that's unique. I'll remember that. But yeah, I always felt that this home invader guy was so nonchalant in just the way he does this. Like, he's just like, he just whacks these people the way he would just go to the corner store to get a cup of coffee.
Yeah. It's just, yeah. I mean, I love it because, like you said, it's very shortly after this movie started, it just goes right into the mayhem.
Yeah.
You see the guy knocking at the door, comes in, takes out the dad really quick. Like I said, puts his head in between the banister and takes his head right off, and just blood and guts and stuff like that. And like I said, if you see the original French version of House Tension, it's a little bit more brutal. Or they actually have a scene which is kind of funny though, because I forgot that it wasn't in our American version, which I was thinking when you were watching it with Mrs. Vamp, they actually show the dog getting taken out in the actual original take too. So
Yeah.
that's kind of a good thing that that version didn't have it. But yeah, I mean, you got that scene. Then all of a sudden he goes up and he goes and takes the mom and like just slices her neck right open, while you see the girl that's hiding in the closet while she's seeing this get done. And then you just hear some grinding and stuff like that, and you're like, what the hell is he doing? You find out he's taking her hand for just no reason. This is like basically just took her hand for no reason.
They're taking her hand because she like tried to use the phone.
Yeah.
How dare you try to call for help? Whack. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, and then they just go right straight to for the little boy, and that's another version that's different from this version versus the American unrated version. Even though the unrated version is still pretty gory, they have taken out some of the scenes from the original one because I happen to be lucky to have seen the original French version, and yeah, they go out and shoot the boy. In this one, you saw the boy running, and you hear the shot, and then later on you see the boy laying dead and he's shot. But in the original version, you see him actually getting shot from behind. And I remember seeing that and going, yeah, you could tell this is a foreign film because that shit wouldn't pass, for American audiences, seeing a little kid basically just get gunned down from behind.
Oh yeah, it's definitely that foreign, just zero fucks given
Yeah.
style.
Yeah, and it's just cool, like I said, and it gets into that, and then all of a sudden the main girl whose house is it, she's getting kidnapped, and the girl that's with her is all of a sudden getting into it, and you start seeing like things throughout this movie that is a little weird, like the girl that's kidnapped is kind of like looking at the girl sometimes like really kind of odd, and you're just like, okay, maybe it's just because the fact that all this crazy shit's happening and all this bad stuff's happening, and this girl is trying to save her friend
Yeah.
from this maniac. And she gets in the back of the vehicle. They get to a gas station. They get some gas. They go in into the teller. She's trying to explain to him like, hey, I need you to help me, there's a killer comes in. Killer kills the guy with an axe, which I love that scene. He just gets whacked right into it, and he's like, okay, now I'm gonna give me some alcohol.
Yeah.
And then and he's like talking to the guy like he knows the guy, like, hey, because he had a name tag, like, hey Frank, how's it going, or whatever his name was. And it's just like, it's just this crazy scenes. But I love the interactions between, like I said, when you watch it and you've seen this movie a few times and then you rewatch it again, you notice little things and stuff like that you go into, which eventually gets into whenever you find out what actually happens. But until you get to that point, she's following, the guy gets away, she starts following after him, and then all of a sudden, he realizes that she's following him, so he sets a trap for her, and she goes past him, and he gets in a wreck. And then it gets into some crazy shit with them having a fight with like a 2x4, a stake thing that's got a bunch of barbed wire, and she's like fucking them all up. And that's why I love it. The fight scene with that scene is just, it's awesome, man. It's just boom, boom, brutal. The fight between the man and this girl and stuff like that. And then you're like, okay, there's like 20 minutes, 30 minutes left of this movie, and you're like, wait, she killed the bad guy. Like, what the okay, why is there still 20, 30 minutes left? She goes back to try to save her friend, and her friend, she unties her friend, and her friend's like staring at her weird, like, get the fuck away from me. And she's like, well, I saved him. It's all right. Everything's good. And that's where the twist, the M. Night Shyamalan twist comes, where
Right.
it's like, all of a sudden, it's like, boom, she was the killer the whole entire time.
Whole time.
Which I guess, like, in the actual original screenplay, they didn't want to make it where you didn't find out that she was the killer until the very last scene, and then I guess they were gonna make a continuation story movie if they decided to do that, where it would talk a little bit more. But I guess like producers and all the other people were like, no, you need to go right away. And then that's when you find all the cool shit, man. It's like, it kind of reminded me a little bit like this movie is like the horror version of Fight Club.
Funny you should say that, because I was going to make a very similar point and use Fight Club as part of my example, because that was the thing that was so interesting to me about it. Because again, when you watch the movie, and especially when you've watched it more than once, you start seeing the little things, like what they did in Fight Club, that you never really picked up on, to realize that they were like teaching you and showing you things the whole time, whether it was a figure that popped up only for a split second and then went away. Just little stuff like that. But it's definitely that same way. The one thing I will say though about Marie's fight scene with the home invader that always kind of made me laugh is it gave me a little bit of that 80s slasher camp Halloween Michael Myers feel. Because dude, she's serial crushing this dude's skull with this fucking bat. And then all of a sudden he just reaches up and grabs her by the throat and they're just having like a choke off where like she's smothering him with like a plastic bag. He's choking her with his hand. But at the same time, I'm like, dude, you just took like 6 power blows to your head with like an Art the Clown style, like barbed wire 2x4 kind of thing. It would have long since been a wrap on you. There's no fighting back after you take some of those shots, man. So I always found that to be kind of funny, where I'm kind of like, look, I'm all for, that little bit of fighting back when you're in pain, like when we've talked about like Creepshow 2. Thanks for the ride, lady. And dude's like hanging on to the car after he's been like thoroughly run over by it. But anyway, I always found that to be really, really funny. But yeah, that Fight Club style where you realize the whole time she was the killer. And the one thing I find also very interesting about how this movie was written or designed or cast or shot or however the decision was made is obviously they wanted to keep Marie as the killer a secret. Cool, no worries. But she's basically, whether she sees herself this way or just however it works out, the vision, the cover for her is this real just hideous chud of a dude. Like he's by no means a good looking guy. He's just this frumpy, awkward hillbilly, kind of rapey looking dude. And I always found that to be kind of interesting that they didn't shoot point of view style where maybe you see the axe itself go into the guy's stomach, like when they killed the gas station attendant, kind of like kind of like in The Shining, but or just something that's at least similar, and maybe that plays out to the M. Night Shyamalan style twist, is that you're so convinced that yeah, of course this just chud of a guy. Of course he would be that way. It makes sense that a guy that looks this way would be fucked up and want to do this. And then to find out that it was, a fit, pretty girl was doing this the whole time. But I always just found that particularly interesting, that there was no similarities whatsoever visually between, Marie and the home invader. But at the same time, especially when you find out that it is Marie, you can't help but kind of awkwardly look back at a scene when you think that he's looking for Marie, but then he goes into the men's room and actually pees at a urinal. It's weird, dude. It's kind of hard not to look back at that and be like, wait. I get it. I understand. It makes sense. That, however, doesn't make any sense because that's anatomy based.
Yeah, I think a lot of that is like they explain it, especially when it comes to when you're watching the scene and watching this movie, and you're like, well, how was she in the back of this truck at the same time that was supposedly driving this vehicle? And it's like, well, then if you look back, she wasn't really back there, because if you notice all those scenes with her friend's never reacting to her there. She's trying to tell her, like, be quiet, I'm trying to escape. And yet this chick is never, is not making anything. And then a lot of it too is this basically showing like you're seeing it through Marie's point of view, and for her point of view, this guy is doing all this stuff. So that's why she can see, him doing this or them doing that and stuff like that. But even when I like it whenever they have the reveal and you find out that it's her, and you see all the go back in the scenes of her, like, axing the guy in the thing and killing the mom and stuff like that. And that it's her. Even when she starts fighting her friend at the very end, it
Yeah.
switches back between her and the guy. When she starts getting kind of vicious, she turns back into, you see the guy, you see the home invader
Yeah, with
guy
the power chainsaw.
with that power saw. So it's kind of like her. I guess it's like her dark side, or that's like her how she sees herself as this killer. And even in the vehicle, you see him take a picture of the from the house and cut the face of the friend off and put it on his dashboard, and you see other girls that are on there. So it kind of makes you think that maybe this chick has killed other people before in the style of how she sees herself as this guy who's this, like, disgustingly, like you said, he's a disgusting. But yeah, it's like I said, like, even when you're trying to watch it and you're like, okay, this doesn't make sense. How can this happen, or how can that happen? A lot of it, like I said, it goes by, like, especially in the very beginning. When you find out, she's in a mental hospital and she got the police talking to her, and she's talking about stuff, the events and stuff that happened. She's telling it how she saw it. This is what happened. This guy came. This guy did this. This guy. I tried to do this. I tried to do that. Until you see that videotape of basically him, her killing the gas tank, and then that's because that was pretty much the only real hardcore proof to show that it was her.
Yeah.
Was because obviously that camera is not gonna lie. It's gonna see her with the axe gun like that. So it's just basically like, this is why you're seeing things in a way, like even in the beginning when he's going around killing everybody in the house and she's in the attic and she's trying to hide, and the whole entire time, like, you're like, why is this guy not noticing her? Or even like the scene where he, when she's chasing him in the car and he finds out about it, and that whole entire scene of him chasing her and his vehicle and her vehicle, and the vehicle that he hits her and flops over and all that kind of stuff. That probably never even happened, because obviously it's only one person. It's not two cars. She
Yeah.
just kind of that whole entire scene, or even the scene when they're, like we're talking about, when they're fighting each other and he's beating the shit out of, she's beating the shit out of him with the 2x4 that's got the barbed wire, and that whole entire scene. That scene doesn't even exist.
Yeah.
That was all just made in their head.
Yeah,
She's
she's
obviously,
swinging the bat at all. She's probably just hitting it into the ground.
yeah. So all that's just in her head. So it's like, yeah, it's kind of like you said. It's like in Fight Club. Even when you watch Fight Club, sometimes you're like, wait, how is he there and there? And then you're like, okay, he's seeing it in his head that Brad Pitt's character is talking to that guy, but then either he's in real time, he's either talking to Ed Norton's character, or that scene never really even happened at all. That guy was never there. He never had that conversation, and just in his head that he thought he saw that. So it's like with these ones where you have like that kind of like weird plot twists and the character is one person but you see two things. Sometimes that scene is a legit scene and they're actually having that conversation, even though he thinks that he's this person or that person. Or a lot of that stuff, like the fight scene, is scenes that didn't even happen. It's just these delusions of grandeur in this person's head.
No, absolutely. And it leads us towards the ending of the movie, the climax of this movie, where Marie and Alex are having this fight between the two of them, where Marie's attacking with the giant saw, and Alex at one point is trying to protect herself with a knife. But then at the same time, you can still see that Marie like wants Alex in some way. whatever that way may be, is can be left up to the people that watch the movie. Either wants her in that sexual way based off the scene we talked about earlier, or just being that this is her best friend, or with the potential of all these other victims that she's been keeping the Polaroid heads of. Maybe it's just another person. But, she leans in kind of for that kiss where it leads you, at least the way that I kind of see it, a little bit more into, that she does like Alex a little bit more or a certain way than potentially other victims, where all of the other victims were straight up offed. But again, Marie, she hesitates, as the old saying goes in various movies, especially when the villains get on their dialogue or whatever it is that ends up foiling their plan. But she hesitates, kind of goes for that kiss kind of thing and ends up getting, impaled with a crowbar, which was a little weird for me. I'm like, that's an interesting tool to go all the way through somebody. But at the same time, look, it works. It's unique. It's, not something that you see every day. And in fact, this whole movie is a lot of things you don't see every day. So it does kind of fit. And the part that I find so fun as an overall finish is it leads to what you would think might be a fade to black. Marie survives the crowbar impalement, and she ends up in a mental institution, and Alex is watching her through what you think at the time is just a one-way mirror, and like trying to, talk to doctors, trying to figure out what's up with this friend, where obviously I think Alex has some type of feelings for her as well. And again, might not be to the extreme that we discussed about Marie, but still that close friend, that companion, that person that she just cares about, or for her to even be there to want to see her. And then you just see Marie just reach for the glass, reach for the window, whether she can see Alex or whether she just kind of knows she's there. And that's when you get hit with the credits, which I thought was a very interesting just end point, just literally just period.
Yeah. I think it was pretty cool too when you're going into like where, you have the scene where she's using that gnarly like jaws of life kind of like thing, just sawing the shit. You find like this guy that helps Marie out or helps Alex out, and he looks kind of familiar, and you notice that this is the same guy that Alex had a dream when they were driving in the very beginning of the movie, and she's like running in the woods, and she's like, I had this crazy dream where I was being chased by somebody in this woods trying to kill me. And then she was like, well, who was chasing you? And you're like, well, I found out it was me, which was kind of like a oh, here's something that's gonna be possibly in the future, where she even basically spoils the movie in the very beginning of the movie for you automatically, but you completely forget about the fact that she said that she had a dream about her killing herself, go chasing herself. And like I said, the guy who stops her and tries to help her out in this dream is actually the same guy that helps her out, which basically kind of makes you think that even that beginning of that movie where they're traveling and going to the house could be even part of Alex's head, that stuff, the things that didn't happen in that movie. So it's that's cool. And like you said, at the very end, I love that where she asked the person like, can she see me through this glass? And they're like, no, kind of like, those two-way glasses, like at a police station or something like that, where you can see in, but they can't see out.
Yep.
But she just has this kind of like third sense, this ESP kind of like supernatural sense that she's there. And it's such a, she's repeating the line over and over and over again, like, we'll never be apart or something like that, and she just like reaches out towards her, and it's kind of like that cool like last image that you see in this movie is like just that deranged like face, like she's just like reaches out at you. It's just cool, powerful like last image of the movie.
Yeah, very, very cool. And it definitely, and it leaves an impression, which is always very, very good for movies, when there's like an impression left and stuff like that, which I always feel pretty highly that High Tension does. Let's talk a little bit about the obituaries, brother. Let's talk a little bit about how we look at this movie. I've always really liked this movie. I think it's so unique. Again, Europe has zero Fs, man, and they definitely dial it in for this one. I think it's a really unique take on slashers, again, mixed with kind of like The Shining. So just like we talked about before, that brought up, in our notes, where it was like, it really is kind of, Maniac meets The Shining. It's just a really good, you know, way to look at this movie, where you've got that, you know, that mental issue mixed with just that sheer, crazy psychotic brutality. I do personally think that this movie has a high rewatchability. I do think the heavy gore and the really crazy aspects of this might be a little, less normal for the common horror populace when it comes to that. But overall, I do think this movie has a high watchability. I actually, it had been a minute since I watched this movie, despite the fact that I really like it. But now it's kind of rejogged my thoughts, that I was like, you know what? I need to revisit this movie just more often, because I do think it's really good. But anyway, man, I do think it's strong. I think it's really unique. I think it doesn't have any major comparisons. Like, there's not another movie I can specifically think of and be like, you know what, that movie's like High Tension, or High Tension is like this movie. Of course, there's those aspects, we've already discussed it. A lot of movies are going to have their similarities, or their, not like trademarks, but like the movies that inspired them and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I just think the movie's solid. Honestly, I give it a solid 8. I really enjoy this movie.
No, yeah, I'm with you on that too. Like I said, to me, I remember first watching this movie, it was just so crazy, because it was like you said, it's not anything that you've seen before. It's a new director at the time coming out and basically just like hitting a home run basically on his first at bat. You know what I mean? And then he's luckily he's had a good career with him. He's got a lot of good movies that he's had throughout after this. But like I said, yeah, it's just I like the fact that that it's it is a foreign film. It is from actors that, I mean, at least as American audiences, we're not really familiar with. Like I said, I think a few of the actors were sort of big actors, but nobody, even for the French cinema, it wasn't. They weren't huge mainstream actors. They were still kind of like this, kind of a low budget sort of like kind of like indie kind of film, as far as like far as that. But yeah, it just goes to show, and then again, like I said, with all these foreign films, with the remakes and stuff like that were done, I think it's kind of bold that they kind of, I don't know if nobody ever came to Alexander and asked him for a remake. I'm pretty sure they probably had, especially because, like I said, so many of those films that were coming out that time, like you have Girl with the Dragon Tattoo that came out with the remakes, and then you Let the Right One In that had the remakes. You had The Martyrs that got remakes. So it was so many of those like horror kind of like aspect films from the at that time in the 2000s that were just getting remade in a short period of time too. Like all those movies were coming out, and then like 2 or 3 years later, they already had an English version of this coming out. So I kind of like give him some praise, because no one's ever remade it yet. So I'm kind of curious on whether or not anybody came to him and he was just like no, and that's kind of why he made the same movie but two versions that you can see. You can see the high tension version, or you can see the high tension kind of version. That's the American, and he just kind of cut it a little bit for knowing that American audiences don't want to see this or don't see that, or with the MPA ratings here differently than they are over in Europe. So I commend him for that, just because it's the same movie no matter where you're at. You're just gonna get maybe some extra gore or some extra scenes, as far as like which region you're watching it in. But yeah, like I said, as far as a movie, yeah, it's like I love this movie. It's a movie that I do watch at least a couple of times every year, just because I think it's just a cool and fun movie. And like I said, once you know that Alex is the killer, Marie's the killer the whole entire time, you kind of watch it now and you watch it, you watch 4 to see if you can be like find like maybe find some mistakes or find some loopholes or find something. But then again, like I said, if you see something that goes, oh, okay, like I said, it's meant to see it. You're seeing a lot of the stuff through the killer's eyes, who's obviously delusional. So if some things don't match up, you can just be like, oh, that's because she's insane. So that's why, so you can kind of, chop up that stuff. But yeah, even watching it though, it's just, you can tell he meticulously went through that to kind of like keep people from us watching it and going like, well, this part doesn't make sense because how the hell did you get out and do this? Well, that scene never happened. That's how I can explain it. But yeah, I agree with you. I think 8.0 is a good rating for this.
Absolutely, brother. I'm with you. So there it is, there it shall be, and there it will be engraved. As said by the devil, as said by the vampire, high tension is getting an 8 on the obituaries on the Vampire and Devil podcast. Horns up, bangs out.
Hey, kiddies, it's your favorite person, the devil here. We're gonna talk a little bit more about those movies with the devil in it. Oh yeah, this time we're gonna talk about Constantine with Keanu Reeves. Have you seen this movie yet? Ooh, is it scary? Is it spooky? Is it sexy? Oh yeah, and that Peter Stormare as the devil / Satan. Oh, he wants to get his hands on Keanu Reeves. Will he get it? I don't know. Have you checked this movie out? It's so much fun. Rumors are that Keanu wants to do another one. Shall we do it? Go and watch Constantine, or the devil might come and get you.
Ghouls and Fangs, Vampire and the Devil here. We got a little question for you. Devil, there's kind of a triangle, a 3-headed monster per se, when it comes to Baltimore, that I don't think people necessarily realize. We've got Edgar Allan Poe, we've got John Waters, but what else do we have?
We got the Ouija boards, oh yeah.
Absolutely. Starting in Baltimore way back in the day, a lot of people are unfamiliar with William Fuld and Elijah Bond, who patented, and the birth of the Ouija board was right here in Baltimore. Devil and Vampire coming at you from the Witchboard Museum of Baltimore, courtesy of our friend John Kozik, who invited us out to check it out and shoot a little conversation action to let you guys all know. Of course, you've seen on our socials that we have partnered with both museums, and we couldn't be more appreciative to John for that opportunity. So whenever you're here in Baltimore, of course, right attached to the Bazaar Oddity Shop off of the Avenue, you have Witchboard Museum Baltimore. And when you're in Witch City, USA, up in Salem, Massachusetts, that's when you get to visit the Salem Witchboard Museum.
Oh yeah, if you want to see some cool stuff, see some cool boards, get some cool history, go see our boy John. Man, that guy is really awesome, man. That dude knows his boards, he knows his history, he's about preserving the society of witch boards and the talking boards and all that goodness. And we love it. We love the fact that, they were going to bring in this museum here in Baltimore, so all the Baltimore fans or all your East Coast fans are maybe not as far away, going up to Salem, come out to Baltimore and check it out, you know what I mean? Because there's some cool stuff in this museum, and you got to check it out because the devil and the vampire said so.
That is facts right there, my friend. Again, absolutely attached to the Bazaar Oddities Shop in the Avenue in Hamden for the Baltimore established Witchboard Museum, or off of Essex Street in Salem, Massachusetts for the Salem Witchboard Museum. Horns up, bangs out.
What's up there, friends? As always, we're coming at you with all of the ghoulish, creepy, fiery, black darkness. It's the Vampire and Devil Show. And we have got oh so much fun to talk about because we've been bad. Devil, we've been bad.
Yeah,
We're
we
going to
fought
jail.
we fought the law and the law won.
Yes, prison movies, my friend.
Yeah, yeah, it's time to sharpen up your shivs and be careful dropping the soap because we're going to be incarcerated in this episode.
That we are, my friend, that we are. But we've got some interesting ones to talk about in this one. I think we're going to get a very, very unique, contrast, if to say the least, in between these two movies. So we're putting the platform up against Slaughterhouse Rock. We're going very current modern against very 80s.
Yeah, yeah, and it's an interesting contrast because yes, they are two movies that deal with a prison, but they're two opposite spectrums of not even just horror, but like, one's your 80s horror camp and your other one's more modern kind of psychological, even social, socially like, conscious kind of movie about like, about the tears and stuff like that. So yeah, it's one of our ones that, once in a while we like to throw these episodes where we pick two polar opposites of movies and kind of go at it in the same, same kind of concept or same thing and things would like that. But once in a while we like to pick ones that are close, but then sometimes, we gotta pick some drastically different movies, and I feel like these are two movies that drastically are different. But then again, a lot of people may not know either one of these movies. So I feel like even though I believe that, the Slaughterhouse Rocks may have a little bit more people knowing it only because it's had the years. But then again, there's a lot of people that probably haven't seen that movie as well. So, it's always good to shed light. And then, obviously, we're talking about the platform. The platform is an Asian horror film on Netflix. So I mean, people who maybe have seen it might have just seen it on there on Netflix and was like, I don't know. So maybe it might persuade them to check it out too.
For sure, man. Absolutely. So why don't we start off with that one, man? So you and I watched this one together, and it was really, 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 really cool. I fluttered my way down to hell, so for us to watch a movie together, and we watched The Platform. And I'll let you take it away. But of course, the gist of this movie is it's a prison. The inmates are prisoners, and instead of being basically a building by the definition, it's more like a cylinder level of jail cells that go down into the earth. And there's basically two inmates to a cell, and it goes down a certain amount of feet. And the one thing about it is your cell doesn't stay your cell. You move to different cells like once a month. And this is where the unique design comes into play.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's been a movie that, I think it came out in 2019 or somewhere around that general area. And I remember seeing it. It was such a, when it comes to, Asian horror films, they always have some really crazy concepts, crazy characters, movies like Train to Busan and stuff like that. It's always something super crazy. And I love a lot of the uniqueness. And this is one of those movies that like there aren't really any movies that I've ever seen that are somewhat like this because it's such a crazy concept. But yeah, like you said, it's basically like you wake up and let's say you don't know how many levels are in this prison per se to begin with. You're kind of on a level and you wake up, you're in a level like let's say we're on level 30 or something like that, and all of a sudden you kind of get up and you're like what the hell, and there's a hole above you and a hole below you, which is obviously a floor above you and a floor below you. And the cool concept about this movie was that, every day there's this huge spread buffet style food that's getting prepared. Like, I mean, you're talking about like lobster and shrimp and cake and all these like exotic foods and exotic stuff all getting put on this huge slab, and it goes down from the 0 level, which is kind of cool in this movie because like when you think about levels, you would think that your higher levels are better and your lower levels are worse, but this is kind of like the polar opposite, where number 1 is the best level you can get, and the further down you get, the lower, the worse the technical level is. And it basically is like, this slab comes down, and it comes down, and you're level 1, and you get, maybe like 2 minutes, I think, or something like that, of this food on your floor. And you're not allowed to take any of that food with you when the slab goes down. If you get caught, because there's cameras and they got some kind of way to tell, it makes it where the room either burns you or freezes you, basically to kind of keep you honest and not being able to store food and eat it another time. You basically can only eat while this slab is on your level. And it basically kind of, when it gets down, you got people who are on the top level who just want to eat their heart's desire, and then the lower it goes and lower it goes, the less food that there is. And it gets down to like 100 level or something like that, there's barely any food at all. So it's kind of like, but the way that it's prepared to begin with, and this like construct of social, the socialness and the psychology of this, is that it's actually enough food made that if everybody ate their portion, it literally could go all the way from the beginning to the end and feed everybody. But then there lies the tale of the movie, is that us as humans and us as society are very greedy. We want to take more than what we can bring. And yeah, I just found that such a cool concept. I mean, you got, so you if you're on a lower level that doesn't eat very often, and you might go a whole entire month without eating, and in this movie they talk about it, sometimes it drives you crazy that you may kill your cellmate just to eat them, so that you have something to eat to sustain you, then hoping that maybe when you wake up you might get in a higher level, but you never know, you might be even in a lower level than you started with. And then, the other cool, crazy concept of it is that you're allowed to bring one item. So some people, bring like a, you see these levels, like, maybe like a sword or a knife or something kind of to defend yourself. The guy that we get introduced in this movie brought a book. And it was kind of interesting. But then at one point you saw where, in the movie where you go down levels, a guy with a surfboard, and there was a lot of weird, interesting things that people were bringing, and it kind of made sense, I guess. Like if you didn't know maybe about what this building was, or this like prison was, the concept of it, then maybe. But yeah, it's like, to me, all the people who brought like weapons were probably the smart ones, because you kind of needed it in this movie.
And it's crazy though too, because it does play a lot on it does prey a lot on the psychological game, because there's scenes in the movie too where, as the main character is also kind of learning, from his roommate, is that he kind of understands that desperation changes you. Because there was the one scene where he and his first roommate woke up on a good enough level. What was it? I think the movie started around like level like 32 or something like that.
Yeah, I think it was in the 30s.
And the food was really skimpy. Then all of a sudden they woke up at like level 170, and you also witness and learn from from other inmates who basically know the deal, that you would hear their just screams of horror at being down so low or whatever, knowing that it's now a month of basically not eating because they've already seen that the greed of society is not going to allow them to take care of themselves. Because the whole spread is also made up of everybody's favorite food.
Yeah.
And, you know, you see people waking up on, day one of the month and being like, looking at the numbers, seeing where they're at, and being like, oh, fuck that, and literally jumping to their death. They're like, we know we're not going to eat for the next month, and I don't want to deal with that, and I don't want to be possibly preyed on by my roommate. And so you were seeing people like jumping to their deaths, and then there was also this interesting subplot where all of a sudden this girl is just chilling on the table as it goes from level to level, looking for her child. And everybody's like, well, she's just crazy. There is no child. Eventually, you realize that there actually was a child.
Yeah, it's crazy because, like you were saying, when he wakes up in this, because like I said, you usually keep, you keep your cellmate that you will have constantly. I guess if your cellmate kills themselves or you kill your cellmate, then that's when you get a new cellmate and they come in. So that obviously this guy, when he first gets into prison, this guy already knows about the prison, and he wake up in a 32, and they're like, oh, you're lucky we woke up in a good level. And we find out that 30 is a good level, but then you see the amount of food that 32 down was still very small pickings, and that's
Yeah.
insane. Like, and like I said, and that's what he's trying to figure out. He's like, okay, if there's 2 people per level, that's 60 people who have ate, and it's crazy that like only this amount of food is left. Like, how is it that this table, that means the people like the 58 people before that got to them just scarfed so much damn food that that it was just beyond crazy. But yeah, but the one part of it that was funny though, because they're trying to make it level so that people will not eat as much food as they want to, and like you said, they each got to pick a food that they want, and he wanted escargot snails, and out of when the spread got to him, it's funny that almost everything is decimated except for these snails. Like I guess when people are even extremely hungry and haven't ate for a month or whatever, still don't want to eat snails.
Right. And it's crazy, just like you said, Devil, because like the size of the platform is sizable. Like it's the size of like I would say like a quality person, like a quality sized living room. Like not I'm not talking like celebrity status, and I'm not talking about like, a studio apartment. I'm just talking like, a quality sized living room from like for like the average person. So it's a sizable platform that's filled with this just amazing spread. And yeah, 60 people just taking it out. And then going back to the scene we spoke of where they woke up on like 170, where it's literally just the plates.
Yes, empty dishes. Yeah.
It's insane. It's just the dishes. Because at first, too, because we didn't really get into this for the Fangs yet, is that when the guy wakes up, he's never been in this place before, and there's a little bit of kind of pomp and circumstance about his character, because when the platform comes the first time, and yeah, there's still for them, there's still plenty to eat, but it's still been touched by multiple hands and been nibbled on or bitten on by various people and stuff like that, and he's too about himself to like basically degrade himself in that way. Like, no, I'm not gonna. How dare I would eat anybody's leftovers? I am not hungry. I want nothing to do with this. Versus his seasoned roommate is like, you'll be sorry. And so you just see that dude just getting down.
Yeah, that's why he said it was like he's like you don't want to eat. It's an insult to everybody who's below you, because you're lucky that you woke up on a level that's a good level that you even have an option to eat anything. where like I said, he's just first getting into this prison. He's just like, yeah, whatever, like, yeah, I don't understand. But then, well, yeah, once he gets down in that lower levels and he realizes like, oh shit, yeah, like, yeah, this guy had some, right words about, being lucky to be on those levels. And then, then like I said, that's the cool thing about it, is like, you never know, you may go up to a high level and you may go up to a low level. And like I said, that, yeah, whenever they gas them and they wake up, and I love, that's like you said, you mentioned that, I love that, because it's like you just hear like the screams and yells, because yeah, like, you could have had that, you could have been on a decent level, and maybe you're like, I didn't eat as much, and you're like, fuck, maybe I should have ate more. And that's kind of where the greed comes to it, where it's like, you could say like, oh yeah, those guys who are 30 level bubbles, how can you eat that much? But if you survived a month without eating because you were on level 170 or 180, and then get on level 2, yeah, normal. Yeah, you would think people watching this movie would be like, "Oh yeah, man, just eat a little bit." But yeah, no, you're gonna tear that shit up
Yeah.
every day that you get it. And that's what he was saying, was like, "Hey, man, the people above me, man, you've already ate. Don't eat for a day or two, and just let it go down." And like I said, in theory, that's a cool It's a better concept about humanity. Yes, only eat what you should be, what you need and stuff like that, not more. But then again, it's like, I haven't eaten in a month, I haven't eaten in maybe 2 months or even 3 months maybe, and it's like, yeah, I probably shouldn't do it. But then again, you might wake up next month when you're on 2 back down to 200 again, and you're not going to eat again. So it's like, you're like, man, I'm going to eat as much as I can get anytime I can get it. And I guess, like you said, like, even if I have to eat my roommate, I'm gonna eat my roommate. And that's what he kind of, in that when that first roommate, when he wakes up and he, finds the guy, tied him up, and he starts carving up a little bit of his leg to try to eat it, and he's feeding him. And then, then the woman we talked about, kills his roommate, and eventually he's on such a low level, you find out that the main guy is eating his dead roommate and stuff like that. So it's like, yeah, it's like people were like, oh my god, the resulting to cannibalism and stuff like this in this movie. But then again, yeah, I mean, if you've gone months and months without eating, you know, locked into a small cell where you're pretty much, you're starving to death, and the starvation is making you go crazy. But then also just being in that kind of isolation where you're only with you and one other person is driving you crazy too. And
Yep.
that's the cool thing about this level, was there was really nobody really knew, because the one guy was like, how many levels are there? And he's like, I think there's like 250 or something like that. And then when they wake up one time and it's like 260 something, they're like, well, okay, apparently there are more than 250 levels. And then in this movie you find out they take it down, and it gets to, the last level is supposedly 333, which I thought was funny, because it's the halfway to the hell, 666, but then again, it's like, it's
But
not,
there's two roommates.
yeah, yeah, but you never really, yeah, and you never really know, because even that last room kind of opens into like something where, kind of, when you get to the ending, you don't really know what's happening, so you don't know whether or not that level is going. There's more levels or whatnot, and yeah, But like I said, to me, I like it because, like, this movie is not your traditional horror movie where it's just like constantly slashing and killing and death. I mean, there are definitely some serious horrific scenes in this movie, and it's definitely got a lot of violence and gore and blood and stuff like that. But like I said, it's more of that like social, kind of horror, where it's like, yeah, like you were saying, those people who are above kind of dictated. And even like him, he was saying like, the one roommate's like, spitting on the food you could piss on, and even he was threatening the guys below them, when they were trying to figure out this way of making people only eat what they're supposed to get. And he's like, hey, guys below us, eat whatever only eat what I put out for you. I put all these plates, just eat that. And they're like, what the fuck are you gonna do? Just well, next time the food comes down, I'm gonna shit all over the food, and then you're not gonna get anything. And that basically was like, okay, yeah, we're not. So it's like you can't. And then he was talking about, well, we got the people who are below us. We can kind of control them a little bit. He's like, now we just got to get the people who are above us. And they're like, well, how do you control something that's above you? You know
Right.
what I mean? They're higher up in the food chain theoretically
Literally.
in this movie. So it's like you can't tell them like, hey, only eat your spare because they're gonna get fuck you. Maybe they'll shit on your food.
Right. And that's the thing. And that brings us towards like what the main closing scene before obviously the closing scenes, but the main kind of basically social experiment, which was if we can protect a single dish all the way to the bottom, so it gets brought back all the way to the top untouched, would that possibly change? Would that basically, for lack of a better term, make an impression on the warden? Like, would they start looking at things differently that, everyone deserves food? So if they could show that human beings can share and look out for each other, maybe the policy would change and it wouldn't be food that stops on level 1 and then goes to level 2 and then goes to level 3. It's maybe it would be food that goes to level 1, gets eaten, comes back up to the top, gets fixed up, then gets lowered straight to level 2, then gets brought back up again, fixed up, and then goes straight to level 3 where everybody's guaranteed food. Didn't quite work out that way, but it definitely made for a very interesting like idea and like I said, basically social experiment.
Yeah. They were protecting like a dessert. Like they were trying to think of what in this because they were in a higher level. They were like, they had their pick a choice of food that was on this table. What would what would that would survive on this table stand out and make it like a point of like, not that I mean, because like I said, nothing ever survives that down. But then that's the whole point is like nothing ever survives. This one dish, if it survives, is insane because that's the dish that within 2 or 3 levels is usually would be already gone because it's a delicacy.
Yeah.
No one's not gonna touch this between any level. So for that to survive, it'd be like, well, maybe something's going on, and we can, yeah, like you said, it was pretty cool. So yeah, they banded together and kind of fought each other, and you fought other people off, and said, hey man, this is only food, survive it so that it goes all the way down, so they have bargaining chips to these people. And then when they started going down, you kept seeing these lower levels that almost nobody was in it, and it was cool because the platform knows, I guess the controlling of the platform knows when a level doesn't have anybody that's alive on the level anymore. It doesn't even really stop at it. It just keeps going down
Yeah.
because it's like we're not gonna stop here for 2 minutes. There's nobody even alive on this one anymore. And
Right.
that's when it goes down to to that lower level, and you find out about a kid, and this kid's not supposed to be in the system, which comes to show like because the kids are not allowed in this program, so it kind of makes you feel like two things. Did this woman get imprisonated with a kid, or did this woman get imprisonated, while she was in prison, get pregnant and have a kid? And this kid is kind of like an offspring of something like that. So how long she's been in this? It doesn't really explain that, but it kind of like makes you kind of think and stuff like that. That's why I said that's why I like this movie because it was like such an interesting concept and such a cool thing. And like we were saying, when we're getting to the end, they have announced that they're making a second part. I don't think that anybody that was in the first movie is going to be in the second movie. I'm not 100% sure as far as acting wise, stuff like that. I haven't really heard like if it's going to continue on because, like I said, in the end of this movie, you know, they thought that the piece of food was the message or the symbol that they wanted to show these guys at top, and they said no, that the boy is the message, so they put the boy on the platform, so when it goes all the way up and all of a sudden the people who are making the food all of a sudden see this little boy and be like, well, where the hell did this kid come out? And then maybe that's what it's supposed to do. So I'm kind of curious on how if they continue the story as far as that, or maybe it's years later and they're like, yeah, we don't really care about people, so we're just gonna go back to the old platform ways.
Right. Oh, absolutely. So as we start to as we discuss how we like to break down, let's talk a little bit about the obituaries and how we saw this movie. And Devil, this was your pick, my friend. So why don't you break it down first?
For me, like I said, I mean I give it a higher score than a normal, and I mean I guess because you can kind of give it a lower score because like I said, it's not a traditional horror film. It doesn't have any bad guys in it, because I guess everybody is really a good guy and everybody really is a bad guy, because it just depends on your determination and where you are in the level. It's like, yeah, you killed your roommate, but is killing your roommate wrong when you've been neglected food for 3 or 4 months and you've gotten on levels before that you just haven't been able to get any food? It's survival considered murder. So
Yeah.
it's one of those kind of like theories and stuff like that. So it's like, yeah, like I said, it's just a cool movie. It's just a cool concept of a prison. I mean, the only thing that I can think of that's somewhat similar, reminding me a little bit, was a movie that came out in the 90s called The Fortress, with Christopher Lambert, that had like the cylinder fortress that went down and you had so it was kind of like that. I like that kind of like social concept with that. But yeah, it's nothing you've ever seen as far as like anything ever before. I mean, there's nothing to even compare this movie to anything, and that's why I kind of like it. I mean, it is a at times a slower film. There are times where it's kind of like, okay, what's going on? But I liked the way that it was shot. It made it more interesting to watch. It's not a very long movie. I think it was only like an hour and a half or something like that. So it did play pretty quick and stuff like that. And it had a lot of cool scenes in it. But yeah, it's one of those ones, like, it's a horror movie that maybe not everybody's going to enjoy. You know what I mean? It really depends whether or not you kind of like more of those sort of intellectual, sort of psychological and social kind of horror films. But yeah, for me, I mean, I loved it. I mean, for me, I'm gonna give it a 7.5.
For sure, man. No, I'm definitely with you on that one. I mean, right off the bat, I think 7.5 is great. I think that's the way to go, and that's where I'm going to give it as well. My thing is, like, I really liked it as well as an overall movie, from the way it's shot, the way it's designed, and we've discussed a lot the very unique concept of which original ideas are fleeting, and there's just not a lot of them. Um, the one thing that's kind of like interesting is like you were saying, that survival of the fittest thing mixed with that kind of like, we don't negotiate with terrorists. But in this movie, you have to negotiate with the terrorists. Like, and the terrorists are all of your mates, like the people above you, the people below you, the person that you're with. Like, negotiations have to be made. But overall, I'm with you. I think it's solid. I think it's an excellent concept. I really love the design of the movie, and I love unique everything. The only thing, as much as I'd love to give it a little higher, like an 8 or so, which I do think it deserves, like we've discussed before, which you already kind of spoke about when it came to your breakdown, was the watchability, the repeat watchability that we often talking about, I think is lacking on this one. But again, I think that's because when you have such a unique concept, people aren't exactly prepared for it. I think platform is easier for it to inch towards cult status, and you definitely have those people that will turn people onto it, but they're into this kind of political style horror that they would watch this movie regularly, but the common populace I don't think would. So that's one of the reasons that I think 7.5 is correct. I'm right with you, bud. I just think it's the way to go. But I, for the unique design and the concept, I really do want to go higher. But I just think the common populace won't get it enough or enjoy it enough to want to repeat it a lot. It's definitely one of those things that I can see somebody on their shelf being like, "Oh my God, the platform. Damn, I haven't thought about that movie in years." But I also really mean it that way. I feel like that's the way they'd look at it is, oh shit, I haven't thought about this movie in years. And when you think about the rewatchability of movies, you want to be able to, solidly say that you watch this movie, every third of the year or a couple of times a year. But I do think that platform falls a little bit into the niche, heavily into the niche, but a tricky ability to watch on a regular basis. But I'm definitely with you, man. I'm cool with that. So you heard it right here, Fangs. That's the way it's going to be. The platform from 2019, we are giving it a 7.5 collectively between myself and the devil. And we're going to continue right into the second part, and we're going to talk about Slaughterhouse Rock. Completely different style of movie. This one definitely falls much more into that category of, I guess, slasher style traditional horror. But this one is more in the ballpark of paranormal to a certain degree. And so it's a very unique movie and it's very strangely shot. It's from 1987 and I really do like this movie and I always have, but it's a very kooky story. It's a little all over the place where the one thing I can give Platform is that it's a very straight story that sticks to the story. Slaughterhouse Rock is kind of all over the place because you start with the basic traditional kind of sexed up teens, kids kind of acting awkward and acting bizarre and doing, but bizarre is in the way teens act, but then eventually they break into Alcatraz, which is weird enough to me that they got in so easily. I was like, wait, Alcatraz? And you guys practically walked through the front door? That place should have been covered in graffiti with beer cans all over the place. But it stems around, one of the main character, basically two of the main characters that are having crazy dreams, crazy thoughts. Are they being burned alive? Are they being murdered in real time? And then you find out that they're having dreams. And then they end up going into Alcatraz where a basically metal singing ghost is kind of helping guide them throughout this while the evil demon Mordecai is trying to kill them. And the funny thing about this movie is it's Slaughterhouse Rock. It's a rock and metal music stylized horror movie. But I feel like a lot of the casting is very badly thought out. Where you'd think that the pitch of this movie would be well, these kids go to Alcatraz and they're being helped out by this heavy metal singing female who's like a ghost. Well, who should we use? Lita Ford, Doro Pesh, something like that. They're like, nah, we're gonna use the chick from Mickey.
Let's use the dancing Tony Basil.
It's weird. It's definitely all over the place. But I'll get back more into my breakdown in the next segment. Take it away, my friend.
Yeah, it's like I said, I don't think I've ever seen this movie before. I may have, periodic, maybe have watched it at one time throughout, my years on coming out of hell, but I don't really particularly remember it that much. But then again, that doesn't say very much because this movie is, like you said, all over the place. It is weird. I do like Tony Basil, and she's always in weird shit, so it's kind of odd. And like you said, they kind of base this off, like you said, you got this dark metal chick and they pick her, and you have this cool metal, soundtrack, and it's done by none other than Devo, who is the least. I love Devo. Don't get me wrong. I
No,
love
and
Devo.
totally.
Those guys are fucking awesome live, and Whip It is one of my favorite songs ever. But when I think of like, dark kind of evilly soundtracked, to a movie called Slaughterhouse Rocks, Devo is the least on my list of people that I figured that was gonna soundtrack this movie. You know what I mean? Like we've talked about with soundtracks before. Maximum Overdrive with AC/DC and all this. Those kind of make sense. Yeah, and not discrediting Devo at all, because the soundtrack is awesome. And I love the songs on it. A lot of the songs are performed by Coney. She does perform, a couple of songs. But yeah, it is a cool contract. But yeah, like I would have, if you would have never told me it was Devo, I would have never in a million years realized, like, wait, really? That's who did that soundtrack? The
And
Whippet guys did that?
I know, and real quick, buddy, like, and that's the thing that's so funny too, is 1987. Like, look, everybody in metal was huge back then. And don't get me wrong, I understand you're not going to get Dio, you're not going to get Ozzy, you're not going to get Judas Priest, you're not going to get Iron Maiden. But you could get, LA Guns. You could get a Lizzie Borden. You could get a, Faster Pussycat. And because it's late enough in the 80s, but again, Dr. Feelgood's about to come out, you might have been able to get Motley Crue, but again, they were definitely still at the height of their popularity. But my point is, there's so many amazing metal bands from the 80s that you really could have gotten for pennies on the dollar to do the soundtrack of this movie, just like Fastway from Trick or Treat. They did the entire soundtrack. But you could have gotten bands, I think, for pennies on the dollar that fit. And again, we are by no means knocking Devo. Mark Mothersbaugh alone has shown to be one of the elite songwriters, score writers of movies and music. Like, there's no making fun of Devo in what people think would be the traditional sense of us making fun of them. We're actually not making fun of them at all. But it is a miss when it comes to what the movie's trying to portray with the music and the band that was chosen to do the soundtrack. It's a little oil and water.
Yeah, it's like going around and like you're making a horror movie, and let's say I'm gonna say in like the 90s, in the mid 90s, and you're like, I'm gonna make this cool industrial goth horror movie. Like we'll use like Strangeland as like an example. Like you're gonna make a movie like that, and the score is gonna be Hanson. Not disrespecting Hanson. Hanson makes good music, and
Right.
and let's just say they make a good score for it. And let's say you watch the movie and you're like, oh shit, man, this is pretty awesome. Who did the score for this? And then you'll read, Hanson did the score to this. It's one of those ones. Like you weren't really, especially at that time, you weren't expecting Devo to write a soundtrack to a movie that has this kind of like premise. But like I said, yeah, definitely not disrespecting those guys for making it and stuff like that. But yeah, like I mean, I'm kind of curious on how it came to, like, out of all the people that you could contact, that you contacted Devo to do. But then, like I said, like you were saying with Tony, I mean, I love Tony. I mean, Tony, my favorite movie from her, which we'll probably eventually at some time talk about, since it's a vampire movie, is Rockula, which is like the cheesiest 80s movie that came out in the entire world. It's got my dude from from all those kind of movies and shit like that. But yeah, I love her in that film. But yeah, I mean, she's the Mickey girl. I mean, she's known for more of that style. She's known as she's been in movies and doing that stuff, but she's always more on the other side of the filming. She's a choreographer, so she's more about doing that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's like, oh, this metal this horror metal band goes to a prison and ends up getting killed, and then the ghost comes out and you see like because you don't really know anything about this band. Then all of a sudden the ghost comes out and you've seen Tony Basil's name on the film. You're like, okay, maybe she's one of these kids' moms or some shit like that. Oh no, she's the metal queen god of this movie. You know, like what?
Like you got her over like a Tawny Katane or something? Like what
Yeah.
sense does that make?
But I mean, that just goes for this whole entire movie. This movie was just like, other than like I said, it's all over the place when it comes to this. It's definitely 80s cheese camp, and like you said, with the nightmares, it was a thing in the mid to late 80s in these horror movies with these when you wake up from a dream and from a nightmare, you like wake up, and then all of a sudden something else bad happens, and then you wake up again, and something else happens. I'm like, how many times you wake up in a movie, in a thing? Like usually me, whenever I have a nightmare, okay, maybe you kind of wake up, and then you're kind of nightmaring that you woke up, and you might do it, but you're not gonna do it like 6 or 7 times.
No.
maybe that that initial first wake up where you're not really woke up and you're still in the nightmare, or dream state, and you dreamed that you were up, maybe. But by the second time you've woken up, yeah, you tend to be actually woke. Where these movies that came out in the 80s, man, especially these 80s horror camp movies, you know what I mean? Like, I love them. But yeah, they're constantly doing those like triple or 4 times waking up in these nightmares. And it's such a. And this movie was like, it's just insane. These nightmares are just like over the top nightmares too.
Yeah. Like dude's getting like slow roasted skewer pig style, like getting like taken out that way, there's like a lust involved in a lot of things. I mean, it's like a slightly, I wouldn't go so far as to quite say it's from Wish, but there is a part of me that kind of feels like that with this movie they were trying to capitalize on the success of Dream Warriors.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I definitely got a lot of like the Dream Warrior like aspect of this movie.
Yeah, it definitely is like that. And so the kids are in Alcatraz, and one of our guys gets possessed by Mordecai, and it's kind of interesting because he basically he's this cannibal, like feeding on his friends. And there's some I will say though, there's some crazy kills in this movie. I mean, this one dude just gets like his just sinuses cleaned by dude's fist, and
Yeah.
just completely taken out that way. There's another like kind of like lusty style scene where like they just like first they're like girl just rib cage is just like kind of pulled open, like pulled down and out, like very very strange, and definitely a little bit campish in the special effects, but I mean the point does come across. I mean it's not like it's not like you saw them like taking off a piece of tin foil or like ripping a little piece of like plastic wrap or something. I mean the effects were there, but we weren't going to be fooled.
Yeah. It's funny, and then you have the obviously like the friends that are trying to run away. Then all of a sudden the one girl is like trying to run, and then all of a sudden goes back to the guy again. You're like, well, what the hell? And then you have like the one time the one monster guy is like hiding behind and waiting for him to come out, and then like there's like some like action fucking like kung fu kind of shit going on or something like that. I'm like, what the fighting? It was very weird. And even when they're searching around the about Alcatraz, and they're like, okay man, make sure we don't lose this guy that's got the nightmares, okay? And all of a sudden, like as soon as they say that, 2 seconds later they're walking around, they're doing everything. It's like, theoretically in this movie it's like 10 minutes later, but in their time, it's probably like 2 or 3 hours later. They're like, wait, where did blah, blah, blah go? And they're like, you just now realize that he wasn't with you this whole entire time now?
Alex is missing, and it's just kind of like, oh, great, we lost our compass.
Yeah. Yeah, it was just, yeah. And then all of a sudden, like I said, then he gets lost, and he gets lost in, taken into the room, and that's when we like as we discussed, that's when the uh the metal goddess of Tony Basil shows up and basically kind of just like says, "I'm the hero. I died in this, Alcatraz because we were trying to do some black metal stuff, and we know, but we're all anybody who dies in this place is trapped here. You need to help us out." And I'm like, yeah, like, that's anytime I'm doing any black metal conjuring of demons, Tony Basil's on the top of my list of that.
Yeah, seriously, but it was kind of weird. I mean, look, I get the concept of like, having your dead peers, come to your aid and kind of and that kind of stuff. That's stuff similar to that is not uncommon. It's plenty of times it's been covered in like paranormal movies. Other
Yeah.
things just in that same kind of style have been covered. Like vampire movies, a movie like Queen of the Damned, when they're attacking, trying to take out Akasha at the end of the movie. It's the main vampires and their right hand people, like their mates, coming together. So it's that same kind of thing, but it's still this very like bizarre thing though too, because you had like one of the spirits of one of the deceased comes up, and again, Tony Basil's supposed to be playing like this black metal chick, but one of the girls that comes up, she's got like half of her face kind of like cut up or like burned off, but she looks like she should be starring in Baywatch.
Yeah.
Like, you don't belong. Why are you here? Like, you don't know anything about metal music. Like, I am not interested in listening to your like New Kids on the Block tape.
Yeah. Even whenever she's, Tony's character is explaining how he needs to go and destroy this, this demon and this entity. I love it because the other bandmates that died were like, well, where the hell was this information when we were all alive? Like, you basically got us killed.
Right.
They had this like crazy kind of argument with them.
And that's a funny thing though too. Also, is like Tony Basil in this movie. She looks like Tony Basil, and I'm not talking about like her features and stuff like that. I'm going also just straight to like the wardrobe. Like, she looks like Tony Basil. She doesn't look like Lita Ford, or doesn't look like somebody from like Norwegian like black metal. I was like, she looks like somebody who just got off a set of like Crybaby.
Yeah. Yeah. They just threw like a little bit of like black clothes on her and go, okay, yeah, she's metal now.
Right. So seriously, this is the way it's going to be. But then as we get towards the especially for you with your beloved Tony Basil there, my friend, as we get to the climax of this movie, when we get towards the end of this movie is also when it also continues to get kind of weird, because it's like, okay, well, we've got possessed like Ricky, like, we're dodging him, we've got him kind of down and out, we're gonna burn him alive. Like, that's what we're gonna do. That's how we're gonna take it out. And then we're covering him with gasoline, but then he's like putting up a fight, and we've set him on fire. But the funny thing is, earlier in the movie, he's having a dream about like actually being on fire, but he's not really burning at all. And
Yeah.
it's kind of like weird. So then they circle it around where they're covering him in gasoline. They're running for their lives, because then in typical 80s cheese, which I love the scene for the 80s cheese factor, but it pisses me off at the same point. It's like, okay, well, we've got the guy down and out. We're covering him with gasoline. We need to light him on fire. But you know what? I'm going to circle around to the front of him where he can grab me. And
Yeah.
I'm like, what the fuck, dude? It's like the girl, like they make fun of her in Scary Movie, but it's like the girl who like runs the one place you can't get out of, or just awkwardly stumbles and falls. Just, oh.
Yeah.
And
that's just funny. Yeah. And then like another part of the movie that I put in the notes that I thought was funny too. It's like, the 80s camp and stuff like that. They're trying to figure out like how to like fight demons and fight the occult stuff, and they go to the, typical fashion, let's go to the library, and they find this big huge book, but there's like this book that's like 17 feet long is just randomly in some library.
Dude.
Like what library has like this big giant book like that that's just basically like some old like occult subtext.
It was insane, dude. It was like this giant occult subtext. The thing was like the size of a lacrosse stick. I was just like, what the hell is going on with this thing, man?
Yeah.
But, I can appreciate it not being like a pocket guide style, but at the same time, I'm like, dude, you could have made that thing look like War and Peace, and it would have made more sense. Like, of course, it's a thick book, like the Sanderson sisters book in Hocus Pocus. Like, make it make sense. And it's like, I already have to do a lot of defending of this movie, but I can't defend that one. I'm just like, what the fuck, man? Like, why would that be a thing? But then it's also weird enough. So, and when we get to the end of the movie, so look, they've got Homeboy down and out. They light him on fire. Strangely enough, I mean, they blow themselves all the hell up in this little shack that's like not even in Alcatraz. The fight, it's kind of like when you watch like WWF and they're having like a Falls Count Anywhere match, and they end up in just weird kooky places for like the pinfall. As I was like, man, this is based around like Alcatraz. That's where the deaths happen. That's where all the spirits are. But you guys have fought your way into a random little wooden cabin that doesn't even seem like it belongs to be there in the first place. Like, why is it even on campus? And so you light dude on fire, sets off the gas cans, blows everything to shit, including yourselves. And then, strangely enough, lone survivor gets a job well done kiss from the ghost of Tony Basil as here, you did so good, man. Here, this is for you. Mwah. By the way, all your friends are dead.
Yeah.
But I'm going to awkwardly give you what you want in allowing you to have this love life that you've been wanting for so long. But just for the fuck of it, I'm going to make you good at piano, too. Dude's just playing piano to end the movie.
Yeah. Yeah, it was such a weird, odd ending, especially because, like you said, they're not on Alcatraz anymore, so I don't understand how her ghost can still travel places that she's not bound to. Like, that was the whole premise of the beginning, in that when they get to Alcatraz and they see all the dead bodies, and every time one of them dies, all of a sudden they become like another, like ghost that you see, and it's like because their spirits are stuck in this Alcatraz, and it's like, wait, she's not in Alcatraz anymore. But yeah, and then like you said, yeah, then all of a sudden like dude's all of a sudden like freaking Elton John on the piano all of a sudden.
It's like, I didn't know you were so good at playing piano. How when did you learn? Like, I didn't. And I'm just like, oh my God, like
Tony Basil gave me her piano skills.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, that's all we have to say about that. So that's where we're gonna leave Slaughterhouse Rock. When it comes to the obituaries, my friend, I mean, the thing is, I do like this movie. I enjoy it quite a bit. It's fun. It's flirty. It's everything I like about 80s camp, slasher style stuff that also kind of has a little bit of rock to it. So it's always going to get a little bit of extra love from me. In reality, is the movie like a 6.5? Yeah, frankly, because it is the way it is. Like, I like the concept of the movie. I don't think it's badly written, but I think it's badly executed. I don't like the way they have the movie. I think the editing's bad. I just don't. You and I have talked about this a lot, and I harp on it a lot. Like, I don't like when the fantasy gets broken. And I don't mind little tweaks here and there. I really don't. I think it's cool and all. But, like, so you still got to keep me in the fantasy. And when a person's waking up 6 times from a dream, or you don't quite realize yet if they're being burned alive. But then you realize that they're not, and that's okay, but then they still wake up again. But then but then the movie begins in this kind of awkward way where it's just straight up teenage angst, and, you know, kids are hooking up, and one dude comes out like super like goofy macho style, like buttoning up his shirt, like, yeah, man, I just hit that. You know, it's very strange. And again, like, I like when it gets to the Alcatraz part, I enjoy that part of the movie quite a bit. I love the design of it. I like the story behind it. It makes sense. Again, not the world's biggest fan of the casting. You know, it's nothing against Tony, but she doesn't do it for me in this way. It doesn't make sense to me. It worked for me in Rockula, which is a little bit of a contradiction, but the design of that movie, and we'll save it for that episode, the design of that movie, it makes sense for it. It doesn't work for this one. But again, the Alcatraz part is it works. It makes sense. But again, it's just awkwardly executed. And then the finishing scene, blowing everybody to pieces in the cabin that shouldn't even have been there, mixed with, you know what, you did good, my friend. Good on you. Have a kiss and some piano powers. I don't know, man. It's weird. But look, I do have a soft spot for this movie. It gives me the chuckles. It gives me some joy. It's a fun movie. I will say, for the people that are into that 80s slasher style, I do think it does hold a little bit more of that rewatchability that we talk about. I do think that people are more likely to come across the movie in their collection or even on like a streaming service and be like, hey, you know what? I do like that movie. Let me watch it again. I think it has a little bit more possibility for that, where you really have to be into that psychological style of platform. So at best, the movie's a 6 or 6.5, but I'm going to give it a generous 7 as my final rating personally, just because I like the story, I like the concept, and I do think the rewatchability is a bit stronger.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, like I said, yeah, I mean, I agree with you on pretty much most of the points. I mean, as far as me, like you said, to me, like when I was watching this movie, because like I said, I don't remember if I'd seen it before. Or, like I said, I probably had at one point, but it wasn't burned in my mind of remembering this movie that much. So when I was watching it, like you said, it was kind of like it started off kind of when it got to Alcatraz. I did like the parts of Alcatraz. I thought that it was fun. I loved the campiness and the 80s-ness of the kills and the, you got your, stereotypical tropes and stuff like
Yep.
that, and stuff like that. So I did enjoy that. And then the last portion of the movie, like you said, was kind of like I don't get. So it's like that middle part for me is awesome, and I think is the better part of the movie. The beginning was kind of and like you said, was just like I don't get the ending. The okay in
Yeah.
my book it's like yeah, it's like whatever, man, like, so it's like, yeah, so to me it's like one of those ones, like I said, would I watch it again? Yeah, probably. I'd like to see, like, maybe, somebody, maybe watch it on like a Mystery Science Theater 3000 style, where someone's kind of like talking about it, or maybe like like a be on like an episode of like Joe Bob or something like that, where he has like a director talking about it. Maybe I'd watch it again. But then again, it's one of those ones like, yeah, it's to me, I feel it's a little bit more, like you said, maybe a little bit more rewatchable than Platform in some sense with people, like in general, horror fanatics and stuff like that might want to tend to watch that movie more than Platform. But for me, it's like it's one of those ones, like if I watched it again, it'd be fun. But then again, like I said, even when I was watching it, I kind of felt myself like sort of fading away in the beginning and fading away at the end. I remember like just like being a struggle and having to watch it like in 2 days because I fell asleep like towards the end, and I was like, woke up, the movie was done. I was like, wait, when did I watch the rest of this movie? And I like go back and rewatch it again. So I was like, oh, and then I realized why I fell asleep towards the end of the movie. Anyway, I'm like, oh, okay, it probably was like my subconscious telling me like, hey, you probably should stop watching this movie now. You saw all the good parts of it, and in the cheesiness Alcatraz section of it, but Yeah, so like I said, I mean, I don't know if I can give it nearly as high as a 7 when you did. So I think for me, like yeah, I don't want to get too low. So maybe like a 6. I think
No, that's
6 is good because it's fun and it's
yeah.
not horrible. But yeah, to me, it's not. I mean, like I said, other than the fact that it does have some cool kills and it does have some good music, even though, like I said, even though the Devo doing the score is weird, I still liked it. I still liked the music to the movie. And I like the concept of it, this kind of like metal kind of, genre, kind of like you said, like the Dream Warriors metal of like Freddy Krueger, this metal of like bringing in this kind of stuff. So I kind of like that. But yeah, overall, I just thought it was not as executed as good as some other movies that have done the, kind of like, metal horror.
No, absolutely. And that's the other thing too, before we make it official and lock it in, is the thing that's actually a little bit of a bummer about this movie is like it could have been a real cool like precursor to what followed and ultimately crushed it. Because there's these great other movies came out that were just crisper in the story and sometimes even better executed. We talked about Trick or Treat, but there's movies like Rock and Roll Nightmare. There's movies like Black Roses, which had, speaking of soundtracks, had a much better, way more made sense soundtrack because Black Roses, the band Lizzie Borden did do the soundtrack for that movie. And it fit and it worked and it was what it should have been. And even, something like Rocktober Blood, which kind of like did it better kind of a thing. So like it's kind of a bummer where yeah, I get it gets love for me for that nostalgia feels, but none of my points, none of your points at all are discredited like cuz it's just facts. It's like it was like I was saying, the movie's a 6.5 at best. It just is the way it is. But it's a little bit of a bummer because it could have been the first real like yes to line up this great series of rock and metal inspired horror movies. The problem is the next series of rock and metal inspired horror movies, frankly, all shit on this movie.
Yeah.
It just kind of stomps it out. But that's the way it's going to be, Fangs. It's going to be a 7 from the Vampire. It's going to be a 6 for the Devil. It is a 6.5 for Slaughterhouse Rock. That is how it will be, and forever it shall stand. That means fatality, victory to the devil. The platform at a 7.5 to Slaughterhouse's 6.5 is the victory in this Vampire versus Devil showdown. That's how we're going to leave it, my friends. Horns up, bangs out.
What's up? It's the Devil here with another quick movie review. Just got done watching the movie Humane. Have you seen it yet? It's pretty crazy. The world is dying and all the resources are being taken. Would you sacrifice and volunteer yourself to help your family? That's what this movie does. Yeah, but then there's some extra consequences. Oh yeah, I love these kind of horror movies. Yeah, makes you think, what would you do? Maybe blood isn't always the best. Check it out. This is the part of the show where we honor those who have died in September. Michael Clark Duncan from The Green Mile, Glenn Shaddix, Otho from Beetlejuice, Burgess Meredith, the greatest penguin to ever live, John Ritter, and Anthony Perkins from Psycho. All lost, but never forgotten.
All right there, Fangs. Let's talk a little bit about a brand new Coffin Nails for us. And I just got done watching a movie called Bloodlust. It's from 2023. It's not particularly long. It's about an hour and 10 minutes. So it has a really unique kind of concept behind it. It's basically about a vampire who gets turned back in the 60s, and she's just living a low profile. She's kind of working at a blood bank, and she's, getting her blood supply to live from that, but still, paying for things properly, so on and so forth. She's really just kind of living like a normal life. And she ends up, befriending a police officer who's been hunting down a serial killer who, as the movie plays out, is trying to, live as a vampire. he enjoys killing his victims because he actually just likes the taste of blood. So that's how he ends up getting it. And then when he realizes that the cop that's pursuing him is friends with an actual vampire, he kidnaps the cop in order to, try to like negotiate a deal for the cop's life in order to be changed and turned into a vampire. The thing is, I can't really overly, as much as I like the movie, as much as I kind of like the concept of it, I can't really go particularly high in the rating for it, which is going to be a 4.5, because it's got just a lot of inconsistencies. The blood wasn't particularly well used. There were bites to people's necks where no blood was shown after the bite. You had weird like sledgehammer shots to people's skulls, and then the blood was just kind of shown on the person like afterwards. And there was also very bizarre dubbing when it came to this. At one point you'd be clearly hearing somebody talk, but there'd be like no word, like no mouth movement, nothing like that. So, and it wasn't really explained or shown in a way that would lead you to believe that was maybe like an inner monologue. Just a lot of inconsistencies. But honestly, it was well shot. The acting wasn't particularly bad. The serial killer actually had a very like Jeffrey Dahmer thing about him, which was kind of cool, I guess. But overall, I mean, it's fun. It's not overly long. Check it out if you want to. But when it comes to the coffin nails, I'm not going any higher than a 4.5 when it comes to this. And that's the way it's going to be.
What's up? You like announcements? Oh yeah. I like announcements. Thanks. We know you like announcements. We have an announcement. Devil, what do we have to tell them?
Oh yeah, we want to tell you that Rockin' Horror is the official sponsor of Vampire and Devil Podcast. Oh yeah, you want to buy our shit? Go online at rockinghorror.com and buy our shit.
Absolutely. At special events that you will always know about where the devil is present and the vampire is floating around, you will be able to get official Vampire and Devil merchandise. We will make sure of that. We will make sure you know about that. But for all of you gothic peeps, all of you fangs, all of you infernos that want to shop online, we are going to allow you to go to rockinghorror.com to get all of your official Vampire and Devil merchandise.
Oh yeah, it's time to get bloody, get messy, and wear the shit that we like to wear.
Absolutely. Horns up, fangs out. Thank you, Rockin' Horror Apparel, and thank you, Mark and Janet.
Oh yeah.